Welcome back to the Purpose-Filled Ambitions podcast. Today's guest is a business owner from Fort Collins, Colorado. He studied political science at Colorado State University and ended up switching gears and starting a land real estate business with his brother in 2017. Please welcome Seth Drehle-Ewan. Seth, how are we doing today?
Awesome, Jack. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. So you're living in Colorado right now, is that right?
Yes, I am. Been here 30 years.
Wow. Parents grew up there too as well?
Yeah, grandparents, great grandparents. We've got history here in Colorado going back to the Colorado Constitution. So we got deep history here.
Wow, that's crazy. Where at specifically in Colorado, you?
I live just outside of Fort Collins. So if you go up from Denver to the Wyoming border, Fort Collins is the city at the northern part. And then I'm in a little town called Timnath, just outside of Fort Collins.
Gotcha. See, I'm from Kansas City, so I'm not really used to all the mountains and all that. What's your favorite part about like living in Colorado?
It's not skiing. Actually, I'm not a skier or a snowboarder, but I love the trails and just getting out in nature. We've got a lot of peaks that are above 14,000 feet. So we have quite a bit of prominence here in Fort Collins along the Front Range. So we have mountains that are, 14,000 plus feet in elevation, and we're at about 5,000 feet in elevation in Fort Collins. So we have roughly 10-ish thousand feet, give or take, in prominence that we can see. So we get really good views of the mountains, good hiking, good trails, stuff like that. And then if you want to go skiing, that's not my forte, but you got lots of good skiing and snowboarding, and that's what drives a lot of money into
Yeah,
Colorado for sure.
absolutely. So, talking about like the podcast, like what was your first impression when asked you to be on the podcast?
Yeah, so you actually found me on our TikTok live. I do TikTok lives for my business, DeBro's Land. I was like, hey, he wants to do a podcast. Fantastic. Let's see what that's all about. And kind of found your podcast really interesting and said, let's make it happen.
I appreciate it. Have you had podcast experience before? Like, is this your first one, or have you done them before?
I've done a few over the years, and it's been a little while, but I have been on them before. It's always fun.
Nice, nice. Do you have like a favorite podcast or you watch? Are you a big podcast guy?
I listen to a lot of them, but the one that I would recommend, it's one that people probably haven't heard about in our little niche that we do, and that's real estate, is retipster.com with Seth Williams. He
Okay.
does a fantastic job of putting his podcast together and just sharing a lot of free information that a lot of people charge. And so he's very open about it. So he's in our space, people call me the other Seth because he's the main Seth. He's the one that kind of pioneered our niche of real estate and land investing.
Yeah, gotcha. So, like, when you say niche, like, how small is the niche when you talk about the land investing and what you do specifically?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at real estate, you've got like commercial real estate, you got houses, you've got all kinds of other things that people do going vertical. But with land, there's very few people in terms of large numbers, there's very few people that actually do land specifically. So I call it niching down. There's riches in the niches, and so even within land, there's even niches beyond that, and we can get into that later. You could probably count the number of people that are actually actively doing what we do, probably with a few thousand across the country. Versus like houses and stuff like that, there's millions of realtors, there's millions of house flippers. Like you go to a conference and there's 10 million people all doing the same thing. I bet you if you went in the same room, you'd find one person, if you're lucky, that does land only.
Yeah.
It's that specific. So, yeah.
So what does the like day to day look like for you and like in your business?
Yeah, so we work completely virtually from our office here in Timnath, Colorado, and we do business all over the United States. We've had the pleasure of doing business in 15 different states. I'm not sure that I really want to do more than that. We're trying to narrow it down and going a little bit deeper. The mentality of an inch deep and a mile, or it's an inch deep and a mile wide versus a mile deep and an inch wide. I like the latter now because we get a lot more specific and the people we work with and just building relationships with people. But as far as like what we like doing, it's finding land that's off market or stuff that's on market that we can split up and sell into parcels that people can develop into homes, into manufactured housing. We do get people that just buy land to invest and looking
Mhm.
for land in the path of growth. But we just work virtually from our office here, and then we have a couple team members that we adore and love working with from the Philippines as well. So we're just a
Wow.
small four person team, me and my brother and our a husband and wife team over in the Philippines that work for us.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah,
So you and your brother started this land company back in 2017, is that right?
that's correct. Yeah.
So what inspired like both of you to just jump on this venture?
Yeah, so my brother was a sophomore in high school. I was a sophomore at Colorado State University, and in my freshman year, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what do I want to do with my life, and I was like, I really wanted to do real estate. I actually got my degree in political science, completely useless. And believe it or not, I remember one professor, he was a government like administration professor, and his favorite thing was to say almost every political science person that I know, they don't work in government. They work in business or they work in some sort of private sector gig. And he's like, there's a lot of business owners. I was like, that's kind of interesting. And I'd learned that my last year, my senior year. So I was like, okay, well, a little late to change degrees now, but just the way it goes. But what inspired us, we just wanted to get in real estate. We have family that's been in real estate for years. There's a traditional route with land, which is buy something, hold on to it forever, and then sell it down the line. And we can get into, our family farm. That's exactly what happened. They bought it for what would be pennies on the dollar today compared to what we sold it for. And you just buy in the path of growth. So we're like, well, we kind of like the idea of doing that, but let's do something more active, something that we can do like these house flippers like on HGTV. And I'm like, we learned very quickly we don't want to do that. And so we landed on land as it happens, and it's just a lot easier because we can do things virtually. We can do things in person, but you don't have to be there physically to purchase or do anything. You can do everything online, which is the big turn on. So we can work our business from here in Colorado, or when we're traveling, we can do it. And on our trip, we just went on a trip to Tennessee, spent 2 weeks there, and we had multiple closings. And we were looking at properties and stuff, and we did all that from a laptop. So if you got a phone and a laptop, you can do our business from literally anywhere.
Wow, that's crazy. So you talked about how your family was in real estate and things like this. Like, would you say that had a big, big impact on what you
Oh,
do
for
now?
sure. Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's a very different model we do versus what the traditional route is. It's like, okay, mom and dad buy the house and they sit on it for 30 years of the mortgage and then they sell it for a lot more. And you look
Hmm.
at housing affordability these days, people are like, well, my grandparents bought it for five raspberries back in 1980. And you look at it like, well, that's true. We have some family that has, they purchased land back in the day for like $1 an acre. There were deals they couldn't afford back in the day that were pennies, literally like 5 cents, 10 cents an acre. And back in the day, back in the 30s and 40s, that was like a lot of money.
Yeah.
Just was not in the cards to be able to go buy, with, random pennies sitting around to go buy that kind of stuff. Had they done it, we are very familiar with the areas they would have been able to buy. I'm like, yeah, today those go for 10,000 an acre, not 5, 10 cents an acre. Like it's literally that sort of vertical. Back in the day, they would buy like they bought their house, they would sell that and upgrade it and buy another one. Eventually, they bought a farm of 300 acres. They sold off about 100 acres at one point. They sold off another 150 acres at another point. Ended up with about 40 to 50 acres with the last part. And that was the part that they held on to from 1970-ish to 2022. And during that time, it was a row crop farm. So we had a tenant farmer that came in and they would do wheat and corn and other things like that. Mostly the crops that don't require a lot of water. They did corn for a period of time. We had, a lot of water rights, but they did a lot of crops that didn't require water, which is low maintenance. You put the crop in,
Hmm.
let it do its thing, and you harvest. So a lot of wheats and things like that. And then we also had a rental on the property. During the time that it was being held, it was our residence, it was a rental, we had the farm itself. It was a beautiful experience growing up there, but it was more of a long-term play for them originally. It was like, okay, we want to live on a farm, but someday it might be worth something. And it
Yeah.
ended up being that it was in the path of growth. At the time when they bought it, it was, Fort Collins was this tiny little town,
Hmm.
and where they were buying was a good 25 miles outside the city. And they're like, everyone told them they were crazy to be buying 300 acres out in the middle of nowhere. And now the Front Range where we live is some of the most lucrative real estate in the entire country. In the
Wow.
last 20 years, home prices used to be at average of what the country was.
Hmm.
Since 2005, 2008, home prices in Colorado have tripled. And now the national average is about 400. Average home in our area is about 750.
Yeah.
So, real estate in our area has just boomed unbelievably.
Yeah, that's crazy. Do you think you would have gotten into real estate if you didn't live in Colorado? Or, like, you think being in Colorado like had a big impact on that, or like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it just would have been where we are. There's real estate everywhere. You got
Yeah.
farmland, you got houses, you got everything everywhere. So it's just being introduced to it. A lot of people in my circle, this is the thing, like when you close off your circles, people don't talk about money, they don't talk about real estate. But once you get in, everyone talks about it. Like, what are you doing? What's your thing?
Yeah.
And every time we get into conversations, I'm like, if I would have been in Hawaii or been in Alaska or would have been in the middle of, I just say what it is, like middle of nowhere in the middle of the breadbasket of America where you live, it's like there's still real estate happening there. There's just different kinds of real estate.
For sure.
And I would even say where you live, it's substantially more attainable. Where we live, we don't do a lot of business in Colorado. It's just not, it's not very feasible. And the things that we do now with like subdividing land and creating new lots, it's a substantially harder process here. It's a multi-year process
Yeah.
typically versus places where there isn't as much going on. So they want to entice people to come in and develop. So they make the rules a lot less stringent. And so those are the places where we do business a lot now. Colorado is just a tough cookie. If you want to do land here, it's harder.
So, for the listeners who are just starting and are thinking about starting a business, what's one advice you'd give them?
Yeah, if you're starting in business, stay authentic to who you are. Might be hard because you're trying to find your voice, but you stick to what you know. It's not knowledge that we're talking about. We're talking about just values and just your character. I think that's the most important thing. Enjoy the journey because every moment, this is something that I've kind of learned over time as I've gotten older and I'm 30 now. The little things make a big life. If you don't enjoy the little things that go along the journey, which might be a mountain, and it is a mountain that you're climbing, and I'm still climbing the mountain, then you're really going to have a tough time when you get to the top because the top never ends. So just enjoy the little moments as you're building your business. And they might be a pain, but you're going to be those moments that you remember, like, oh, back in the day, that's when we were doing XYZ, and it's like those are the memories you're creating along the way. Stay true to who you are, and remember and that you're just building. You're always building, so don't discount anything as too little to enjoy.
Yeah, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. You kind of talked about like knowledge and stuff, and like early on in your career, what were some of the biggest challenges for you when you just getting started?
Yeah, knowledge and like what to do because it's so overwhelming. There's like so much information
Hmm.
that people are like, well, how do you put it all together? I'll tell you, you can get courses, you can have a mentor, you can read books, you can go out there and listen to podcasts like this one. You can go out there and do all that stuff. At the end of the day, it's just doing stuff. Doing is going to get you a lot more expertise and build your rhythm more than just talking about doing stuff. So you're like, okay, I'm going to build a website or I'm going to hire someone to do a website. Well, instead of just talking about it, do it and then
Hmm.
show people what you have. And if they don't like it, okay, well, get, some feedback on how you can make it better. Don't be like stuck in this. It has to be perfect for me to do something, or I don't know how to do this one step, but I know the other 30. We'll do the other 29. When you get to that one, you'll figure out the last piece. It'll all fall into place. And I can't say that all businesses are that way, that maybe they are, but like in the real
Yeah.
estate business, there's a lot of parts that come together. And
Hmm.
we find properties, we go through diligence, we purchase the property, we improve the property, we sell the property, we repeat. But in that process, there's probably 50 parts. And in order to understand the 50 parts, you got to do it over and over and over. And even today, we still learn stuff, and it's like, oh, that's a new one. So it never ends. It
Yeah.
never ends.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Right now in my career, I'm kind of learning sales and just all the sales training, and it's just like drinking from a fire hose, and it's like I'm sitting through
That's
just
exactly it.
yeah, yeah, and it's just like I just got to go out and sell myself and fall on my face just to learn and get the experience before like because right now I'm just kind of sitting on sales calls and it's just like all right, like I get it, like I just got to go and I got to go and do it. I think that's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, with sales calls, I will tell you, it gets easy over time. That was the biggest thing when I got started was just picking up the phone. Picking up the phone was the scariest thing. I'm very introverted, and I was like, what are they going to say? And what if they do this? And what if they do? It's like, how about we just pick up the phone and figure out what happens? And at the end of the day, the worst they can do is hang up on me.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
So, they might cuss you out, but it's like the worst they can do is hang up the phone. So so over time, if you just talk with enough people, you kind of get over that. And it's like, it's just another phone call.
Absolutely. So when we were talking earlier, you mentioned a personal journey of major weight loss. Would you share a bit about that experience and how it impacted your mindset on like being a business owner now?
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I was probably it's hard to say because I never tracked anything. So I was probably in the mid 200s. And then in college, I lost a little bit. During COVID, the COVID years, I probably went back up to about 230. And it was when I actually got it that I had someone like this close from going to the hospital and this close from having a big problem. Seth, like, this is unbelievable. You're in your mid 20s. What is going on?
Uh-huh.
And it was kind of a wake up moment for me. So I went through a massive weight loss journey back in 21, 22. That's about when I started. And it's a journey now. So
Hmm.
I've realized that now. Before it wasn't really, it's like, oh, okay, I'll just take a diet and then it doesn't work. So it's a lifestyle change. I went from 230-ish down to about 130.
Wow.
And it's taken me 3 years to do that. In that process, I started doing fasting. I also gave up alcohol, gave up a lot of sugar. I don't do a whole lot of sugar anymore. Just eating whole foods and even exercising. Like, so now I walk about 5 to 10 miles a day. I lift now. I was like, I never even thought like going to the gym was a thing for other people. Now I do it 5 days a week. So it's taken a lot to kind of share that with people. And I'm
Yeah.
like, it's a vulnerable place to be in, but it's a place that a lot of people are.
Hmm.
So as far as like how it's helped, the other thing is like tracking macros and calories. That's another thing I never did before. So there's an app. I will mention this because it's cheap and it's really useful. It's called Yazio. And with that, you can track your macros, you can track your calories, you can put in your goals, and it kind of helps you track everything. And then you can scan stuff. So you can put in blueberries or you can scan like your favorite snack and it'll bring it up. So you can actually really be accurate with what you're intaking so you can be in a caloric deficit. So a mixture of all those things led to the weight loss. And as far as how it's impacted my business, I've got a lot more clarity and focus because
Hmm.
I'm not, it just, you don't, when you're that weight or even just a little overweight, it's like you don't realize it as a problem until you have the other side of the experience. And now I'm like, I just have way more energy to be able to do things and have a lot more focus than I ever did. It's hard to put in words if you're not from there to here. It's like a totally
Yeah.
different life experience in terms of your mental clarity. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. So obviously that took a lot of discipline and just staying consistent in yourself and just knowing like, all right, this is the end goal where I want to be. So that's super cool to hear. So talk to me about discipline in business and how that kind of relates.
yeah, it's kind of the same thing when if you've ever seen there's like a meme or a picture going around that's got like a guy or a woman that's at the bottom of the mountain. And the mountain looks like it's this, but really there's all of these like dips and ladders and pools and snakes and all kinds of things that you got to go through to get to the top. So it's kind of the same thing. You got to keep at it little by little. And there's something we started doing this year called just keeping track of your wins every day. So every single day we write down a win, just something that was positive about the day that could be as small as having this podcast, like that's a small win, or it could be, hey, we made this sale, or we got this new client, or we got this new property, or this new relationship with this new bank, or something like that. So, like, just adding those up every single day, it doesn't matter how small it is, they'll add up to this giant mountain that you've climbed. And when you look down back off the mountain, you're gonna be like, wow, this is where I am now, and that's where I started. And then you look up this way and you're like, I got a lot more to go, because you start comparing yourself to other people. So that's the other thing I'll say, is that comparison is the thief of joy. I think it's 100% true. So you can compare yourself to other people when you're seeing what other folks are doing, but you also got to look at where you started, because at the end of the day, it's your life journey, not everyone else's. So you got to decide, how much have I moved the needle today? And if you haven't moved it today, well, guess what? You got tomorrow. You can always start again tomorrow and do more. And just stay disciplined day by day, and it'll add up over time.
Exponential growth for sure. I love it. So you sold your family farm to a developer. That's obviously like a huge decision. What emotions and lessons came out of that experience?
Yeah, it was a big decision. In our little town of Timnath, Colorado, we were about 500 people. Um, and over the last, I'd say 2005, 2008 is about when it started. It was the same thing across the entire state of Colorado. Someone put a pin on Colorado and said, "Oh, this is the place to move to." And we kept winning all these awards: best place to move, best place to retire, best place to go to college, best place for everything. And it brought this massive influx of millions of people. And Colorado wasn't very big, and so now I think it's almost 6 million people. It was like 3-ish million, so we've almost doubled our population in terms of total size. The problem with Colorado is we're not a very big state in terms of development. It's a big state, but there's not a whole lot of development in terms of total size. Most of the people live along the I-25 corridor, which gives you like Fort Collins down to Pueblo. So you got Fort Collins, Boulder, Denver, Pueblo, Trinidad, and that's about 90% of the people. And so there's not a whole lot of land that goes around there. So Timnath went from 500 to about 35,000 in the last 15 years. And that's just one small little bubble. There's another town of Windsor, that one's doubled. There's all these little towns that just start adding up. So pretty soon, from Denver to Fort Collins, Denver to Colorado Springs, instead of having farmland in between, you're just going to have this giant city. And it's going to be like the Northeast, just one giant city just blocked together. And so what happened is our farm, which was 300, then we sold off some pieces, and we end up with 40, 50 acres. We kept having these farms around us being sold, and they would be sold up to D.R. Horton or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were the last farm, and they finally came with an offer that was too hard to refuse. And the other thing that was important was they wanted to protect the history of the farm, the people that owned it, and the barn. There was a barn on the property that was built in 1871, and we wanted them to make the barn a part of the development.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, the builder we sold to was a local builder from northern Colorado. They're Hartford Homes. And so they understand the history of the area. They're not D.R. Horton. D.R. Horton does stuff everywhere. So this is a builder that's local, and they want to stay in northern Colorado for a long time. And they help protect the history of the farm too. That's the biggest problem. You're like, oh, they just come in and wipe the farmland out, which,
Yeah.
yeah, that happened. But at the same time, they came in and made 100. It's in the process of being developed now. We sold in 22.
Mm.
And the first homes just went up last year, the end of the year, and now they're really going gung ho. They built a 5-acre park around the barn, and they're going to put somewhere in the range of 160 homes on the
Whoa.
property. So it's a lot of families are going to get to enjoy what we got to enjoy growing up, which was, it'll be a very different experience than what we had
Yeah.
growing up on a farm, but you kind of get that sense of love. There's going to be 160 families that are going to get to enjoy the same land that we got to enjoy for so many years.
Yeah, that's gotta be an awesome feeling.
It is for sure. So, and in May, I guess in June, somewhere between this month and next month, they're going to finally open the park to the public. You can go there now, but they're actually going to name the barn. They're going to name the park, and they have the streets already named at this point. But they have our family name Drehle as a street. They have the barn's going to be called the Drehle Memorial Barn, and the park's going to be named. This is kind of a secret. Our grandma doesn't know she's going to have a day. They're naming the park after her. There's
Awesome.
going to be a lot of cool things that they do to just memorialize our name, as well as the people that previously owned it. Some of the streets are actually named after all the other previous owners of the
Wow.
property. So going back to 1871, they have a few streets named after some of the other folks that have enjoyed the farm over the years.
Man, that's super cool. That's super cool.
Yeah.
So, you transitioned from college student to business owner, and while in college, like you weren't sure, like was political science like your route? What were some of the like biggest like mental shifts going through that whole process of the 4 years and being at Colorado State?
Yeah. So at Colorado State, I started with political science and Chinese. Ended up with just political science. I spent some time over in China, and I was like, okay, big difference coming from this small little town in Colorado to a city the size, Shanghai these days I think is close to 30 million. When I was there was probably 20-25 million people. Very, very, very different experiences in terms of life and what goes on there. When I was over there, I was like, what do people do here to make money? And I started looking into that a lot more. It's like, okay, how do people make their money? And the people that were making the most money were entrepreneurs, business owners, people in real estate. There's other ways to make money in business, but those were the three that I was like, wow, this is where people are making their money. And I started looking at what kind of salary trajectory would I have being in political science, and I was like, that there's no money to be made here. Like you go in government, maybe if you work a job for 40 years, you'll get to work at the White House, and then you'll make like the top government salary, which is like I think close to 200,000. So I'm like, that doesn't really interest me at all. I don't want to build this career where I tapped out. And so that's where when I went over to China, there was just so much money being thrown around. I was like, what are these people doing? And a lot of them were real estate developers, believe it or not. There's a ton of real estate developers that have the title of billionaire over in China and factory owners and just people like that. So it's like, how can I get into that back home? And that really kind of opened my lens. And then I took a few classes of like international business because you had to take electives. And I was like,
Hmm.
okay, well, this is kind of interesting. Like at this point, it's too late to do a course correction and do something totally different, but
Yeah.
maybe I can do something in that regard. Just opening your eyes to something a little bit different kind of led me to the real estate path, and the rest is history. But I'd say the main thing is just you don't have to do what you're going after your degree for. Like a lot of people are like, maybe they're forced in that position, but it's just one of those things like you don't have to go down that path. It can be very lonely. You go down a path you don't like at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. So you kind of talked a little bit about your interest in AI and just all of that. What specific tools in AI and things do you use to run your business and things like that?
Yeah, we use AI every single day. There's not a single day that doesn't go by we don't use it. So we use the three main ones. We use ChatGPT, we use Claude, and we use Perplexity. Those are the three main ones we use. We use ChatGPT. We have the premium version for all three. So if you haven't seen the premium versus the free version, it is a night and day difference in terms
Yeah.
of the power you can use. So we use it for role playing sales. So that might be a good one for you, Jack.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
use it role playing a lot of other scenarios like we got a seller and here's their situation. What can we use for leverage? I mean, we're
Hmm.
just trying to find a neck for what we can do, or we have a buyer, here's their situation. What are some things we can give them for, resources? So just role playing, from different perspectives, that's a huge one. The other one is image generation. We've used that for a lot on our website. Ad copywriting for all of our listings. We use realtors and brokers, but we also list our own properties on different websites. And so we have to be able to put stuff together. We used to do it the old fashioned way and handwrite it, and now we use ChatGPT to write them out. And you can make them look really nice and professional. So those are the main ones. And then just doing research. Like we can do a ton of economic
Oh
research. We
yeah.
can do a ton of specific area research, county rules. That's with ChatGPT. And then we use like Claude. You can upload PDFs and ask it questions
Mm.
from the PDF. Perplexity, if you're going to go do a Google search, use Perplexity and say, I want to go to some restaurant and here's what I want. Here's my requirements. I want this many stars. Here's the price point I want. And if you went to go do a Google search, you'd be looking at how many restaurants. So you just throw in your criteria. It'll go do 50 Google searches like that
Yeah.
and give you the top three results and say, these are the three we think you would like the most. And the cool part is you're using these different tools, they get used to your demeanor and the questions and your background and everything. So as you start asking questions, it builds up a memory bank
Mm-hmm.
so that when you ask the next time, they're like, oh, we already know you like this, this, and this. So therefore, this time you probably will like this instead of having to ask it every time. So that's the other thing with the paid versions is, the memory bank fills up and then you kind of have to dump.
Yep.
So with the paid one, you can do a lot more in terms of really, really dynamic and deep research and stuff. The biggest thing we've been using it lately for is our move. We want to move from Colorado. That's kind of on the agenda in the next 2 years, and just asking a million questions
Mm.
because we don't know. Like if you ask me about Colorado, I could tell you, but I don't know. So it's like we just role play and just ask a lot of questions with those different platforms to get answers.
Yeah, it's crazy the power of AI and just what it can do for businesses for sure. Yeah, I would say it's interesting you talking about like you have three different ones you use because I've really only played with ChatGPT. I have the premium one and I use it for like all of the above you're talking about. But like really like looking at it and you talking about it, like the specialized niches for that is kind of cool and just hearing you talk about it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and there's a million other ones out there, and it's like I try to keep up with them.
Yeah.
Those are the three I keep up with the most, and then we do experiments with different ones out there too. So I think the most important thing for people that are not familiar with it is just understanding that prompt engineering is going to become a thing.
Uh-huh.
And prompt engineering is just understanding how to ask it questions and ask it the right way. Because if you say, "Hey, I want to go to this restaurant," and you don't give it any context, it's not going to give you what you want. If you're like, hey, I have this food allergy. I'm looking for 4 stars. I want to be this distance from my house. Please look for traffic. I'd like an alternative. And this one is booked out. Does this one require reservations? Like you throw all those things together into the prompt. It's now going to give you a very specific answer instead of just here's some general answers that you
Yeah.
could have Googled.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the biggest thing that we've kind of learned in the last, I'd say, 12 months. It's just prompt engineering is critical.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So, kind of looking forward, where do you see your business and yourself heading in the next few years?
Yeah, so in the next few years, we've changed our business quite a bit because we've been in basically the flipping business. If you take like house flipping, we do land flipping.
Hmm.
And what we've realized in the last few years is the ability to create something is better than just taking something and throwing it back up on the market. So we've been getting into subdivisions a lot lately, and we really love it because we're creating a product. At the end of the day, it's a new product, taking a bigger piece of land, making them smaller, and then selling them off.
Hmm.
So right now we do about 5 to 10 projects a year. I want to be somewhere in the 20 to 30 projects per year range in the next few years, and the multiples on that are going to be substantially more. We have some goals we want to hit, and we're on our way to getting there. So our main goal, this is like the thing that we've kind of created a mission statement, and our mission statement is to democratize land ownership. It's been kind of a vague mission over the years. It's just like, okay, we want to get land from us and give it to people in a way where we make money and they get to benefit from land ownership. But it's kind of transformed in the last couple of years, like since 22, 23, into becoming, maybe that's like more than a couple of years, like last 3 or 4 years. It's been how can we create a product that someone can actually change their life with? And so, if you look at like Ford, his whole mission was democratizing cars
Hmm.
and transportation. So for us, for us, it's about how do we democratize land ownership in a way that the people can benefit. And for us, it's affordable housing. So we are not providing the housing, but we're providing the affordable land that people can take to build a house and build, or not build, but install manufactured housing. And we've had the pleasure of, having multiple people be able to take, a situation where they're renting or it's in a bad situation, they're moving into something brand new because we have a piece of land that they can afford to be able to, develop into their dream home. So that's kind of our goal in the next few years, is just do a lot more of that instead of just kind of
Awesome.
nilly-willy going about it. Yeah,
So, kind of closing it out here, we got some rapid fire questions for you.
go for it.
What's your favorite book or podcast right now?
And so my favorite book, I've listened to a bunch of them. There's an app called Hoopla,
Hmm.
and Hoopla gives you access to the public library system. So if you have not used an app and go ask your library, they can give you access to books and movies and all kinds of stuff, books and audiobooks as well. So I have a few of those, but the one book I'd recommend is The Walker Way by Bob Walker. And it's a man that he's the second generation of a company here in northern Colorado in Timnath, and they build what I would call the greatest lawnmower in the entire world. So I'm a little bit biased because my father worked there, and I just read his book. He's in the process of retiring. He's now the chairman of the company. The sons are now taking over the third generation, and he kind of walks through how his father kind of built the business up from I think he was actually from Missouri, if I'm not mistaken, Kansas
Wow.
or Missouri, somewhere out
Yeah.
there. And they moved the company here to Colorado many years ago, and they started from nothing and built it into this massive empire, and built this beautiful mower that has changed so many lives. So I love it, and they're a faith-based business, and so I think it's a good fit for this podcast to share that one. I got so many books I could share, but I think that one's really good because it's local to me.
That's awesome. So what's one piece of advice you live by?
Yeah, my best piece of advice is to live in the moment, and good business brings good people. If you're doing business with anyone, your genuine experience that you have in life is going to be your best asset. If you try to fake it until you make it, that's
Hmm.
part of it. But if you bring your genuine experiences you've had in your life, it sells way better than trying to be someone that you're not. And so when I share the stories I've shared here, or the stories that you'll see if you come to my TikTok lives, like I literally share everything that we have done in our business and our lives. It just gets people in a different way because we just share what we've done in our lives. So share your experiences genuinely, and people that appreciate that will come into your business and your life.
That's good stuff. If you could go back to day one of your journey, what would you do differently?
That's a good question. I've been thinking about this question because I saw it on the outline. I don't know that I would change anything. I think the only thing that might be something that I always have to remind myself is just enjoy the moment, because there's a lot of times like you just get stuck in the muck.
Hmm.
You fall into a bucket of stuff you don't want to be in, and it's like, oh, why are we still doing this?
Yeah.
And then the next day something really good happens. So if you just enjoy every moment, when you start looking at mountain, like we talked before, I'm like, you'll see this giant achievement of things that you're like, I didn't even realize we achieved all that. So I try to be present in the moment. That's something like you're working really hard and hustling, you don't really enjoy the moments sometimes.
Hmm.
It's something that I would definitely, if I was going to change one thing, not from the beginning, but just in some periods of my life, I'm like, I wish I would have experienced it more by being present in
Yeah.
those moments.
It's good stuff. I like it. Seth, it's an incredible hearing your story and your insight. I appreciate you being on the podcast.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to talk with you.